If I had to focus on just one thing that would help me get from 25% to a lean 15% body fat, it would be having the right calories to protein ratio with each meal. I will keep this very simple. For every 100 calories you consume in your nutrition, have at least 7 grams of protein. Again, 100 calories, 7 or more grams of protein. Based on my work as an online coach and exercise science communicator, I see that too many people complicate their fat loss journey, falling for all different types of diets, workout routines, and sometimes even dangerous supplements. But if we look into the scientific research, and I'm not talking about studies done on lice, I am talking about actual randomized controlled human trials, these studies show that fat loss nutrition boils down to 2 variables: stay in a calorie deficit and consume enough protein. A 2019 study does a great job of explaining this. The researchers analyzed different types of diet setups. Eating low carbs and high fats, so something like a ketogenic diet, or high carbs and low fat diets were compared. When the calorie and protein intake between the 2 diets was the same, fat loss progress was also the same. Think about that. It didn't matter whether someone did a ketogenic style diet or the complete opposite by eating high carbs. There were no differences in fat loss when calories and protein were matched. And in the study I mentioned, the researchers analyzed 32 metabolic ward studies. This means that the researchers literally fed the participants everything they consumed. So this research is highly controlled and we can be confident about the study results. Essentially, I want to drive the point home that the calories and protein ratio in your nutrition is the most important variable for your fat loss progress. If you want impressive and sustainable fat loss, instead of trying all different types of popular diets, let's go back to the essence. The only reason any diet works is that it places you in a calorie deficit and helps you eat more protein. No single food or eating regimen will make you magically lose body fat. It all comes back to calories and protein. Now, you can also lose fat without having an elevated protein intake and just being in a calorie deficit, but this typically has negative consequences, like increased hunger, decreased energy, and muscle loss. So if you just need to keep one sentence in mind while in a fat loss phase, that is to control your calories while making sure your daily meals contain a form of protein. As I mentioned, a rule of thumb I like to maintain with my clients is to have at least 7 grams of protein per 100 calories consumed. So if you consume 1800 calories per day to lose fat, aim to have 126 grams of protein. If you consume 2000 calories per day for fat loss, go for 140 grams of protein. Someone with a larger body size and more muscle mass may need to consume closer to 2500 calories per day, and then benefits from having 175 grams of protein per day. To estimate your calorie needs, you can check the previous videos on my channel. See the screen now for a quick reminder of a simple calorie calculating formula. Relating your protein intake to your calorie intake also makes high protein eating more practical for most people. Eating 7 grams per 100 calories you consume sounds like a realistic ask. 1 gram of protein is about 4 calories. So if you eat 7 grams of protein per 100 calories, your daily protein intake will end up being around 28 to 30% of your total daily calorie intake. Having 30% of your daily calorie intake coming from protein is reasonable. Your protein is elevated but not extremely high. You still will have 70% of your calories to balance between carbohydrates and fats. This is where the powerful side comes in of having a nutrition approach focused on controlling calories and protein. You now have a lot more flexibility. If I tell you that to lose fat, you literally only have to focus on 2 things, which are your daily calorie and protein intake, that leaves you space to design your nutrition in a way that suits your preferences best. Do you enjoy a high-fat approach with lower carbs? That's possible. Do you prefer incorporating more carbs in your diet? That is possible too. Or maybe you enjoy using intermittent fasting by skipping breakfast in the morning. It's all fair game. As long as your daily calorie and protein target are achieved, you will see awesome fat loss results. I like to call this approach freedom tracking instead of macro tracking, because you're not strictly counting your carbs, fats, fiber, calories, and protein. You only track calories and protein. Do not put yourself in the corner by having a very strict carbohydrate and fats goal every day, because your carbohydrates to fats ratio does not impact your fat loss progress anyway if you stay within the same calorie deficit. I'll give you an example. In my personal nutrition, my carbohydrate intake is different every day. Yesterday, I had 180 grams of carbs. Now the day is almost over and I'm at 310 grams of carbs. But guess what? I hit my calories and protein target, so it's all fine. I achieved my 2 most important nutrition targets of the day. The rest of my nutrition is open and flexible based on how my day develops. So for a simple and sustainable fat loss method, Start by determining your calorie deficit. Again, check the screen and pause this for a simple formula you can use to establish a starting point. And then, for every 100 calories you consume in your nutrition, consume at least 7 grams of protein. Now stay consistent with your nutrition tracking and see the body fat melting off. As a side note, I can already see someone typing in the comments,
"Not all calories are the same. Eating 2,000 calories of junk food is not the same as eating 2,000 calories of real food."
This is a great point, especially from a health perspective. But let's look at things strictly from a fat loss perspective for a second. Even if your calories come mostly from processed foods, you will still lose fat if you stay in a calorie deficit and consume enough protein. A great example of this is an experiment run by Dr. Mark Haub, a professor of human nutrition at Kansas State University. The professor was able to lose over 15 pounds in 10 weeks by mostly eating fast food and protein shakes but still being in a calorie deficit. So again, this showcases that it's indeed your calories and protein that drive your fat loss progress, regardless of what type of diet you maintain. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not telling you to mostly eat junk food. Of course, whole foods do fill you up better and provide more nutrients, like vegetables, whole grains, fruits, and lean meats. But if we look at what makes you actually lose the fat, it's hitting your calorie and protein numbers. So far in this video, I assume that you're open to the idea of tracking your calorie and protein intake. But in my work as a fitness consultant and having coached hundreds of people, I am aware that tracking calories on an application is not for everyone. So I also want to show you an alternative way to still see fat loss benefits without counting calories. The average individual in the Western world has a protein intake that's around 16% of their daily calorie intake. We know from research that protein is one of the most satiating nutrients. If you eat more protein, it's typically also easier to control your calorie intake. So if we can get your daily protein intake up from 16% to my recommended 30% of your daily calorie intake, that will benefit your fat loss. And again, I'm going to show you a good study supporting this notion. In this research by the University of Washington, when the participants increased protein from 15 to 30% of their daily calorie intake, they experienced less hunger and their calorie intake dropped without them counting calories. So simply the act of eating more whole food protein sources will naturally drop your calorie intake. Here's a simple fat loss nutrition recommendation you can use as a starting point that does not involve calorie tracking. Consume 3 balanced meals per day. With each meal, have a palm-sized portion of protein, a cup of handful carbs, and 2 fists of vegetables. Without tracking calories, you will have an elevated protein intake, while also being in a calorie deficit because of the controlled portion sizes. Using your individual hand size to determine your food portions is a powerful strategy because your hand size is directly related to your body size, and body size is related to your calorie needs. Whether you decide to track your calories or have a portion-based approach is up to your preference. My clients have seen fantastic results with both strategies. And by the way, you do not have to be perfect all the time. We all have our days in which you may go over your calories or exceed the recommended portions because of a special occasion. Be consistent in your normal day-to-day, which will be 80 to 90% of the time. During rare, fun events, you can be flexible and enjoy the special occasion. Now, we discussed nutrition in detail, but what about training? Shouldn't your workouts be focused on burning fat as well? I want you to remember this following phrase. Nutrition determines how much weight you lose. Training determines what type of weight you lose. Your training is not here to create a calorie deficit. Your training sessions are there to make sure your body holds on to muscle as you are dropping body fat because of the controlled nutrition approach. Just exercising more is not effective for fat loss. A 2021 study found that many people feel more hungry and tired after doing extremely high amounts of cardio, which then makes them eat more and move less after the cardio session. I am all for incorporating cardio 1 to 2 times per week as a way to improve your cardiovascular health. But for most people, the bulk of your training should be focused on lifting weights. Personally, I lift weights 4 times per week while also having 1 weekly cardio session. How to balance your training will of course depend on your schedule. For a simple training routine as a starting point, you can check out my 3-day full body example program on my YouTube page. And if you are truly ready to level up your fitness progress with professional guidance, apply to my one-on-one online coaching service. I will fully personalize your training and nutrition approach based on your lifestyle while holding you accountable during the process. Apply by visiting the link in my description and we can set up a call to discuss your goals. I look forward to helping you achieve better fitness results than ever before. And that was it for today's video. I hope you now have a better idea of what to focus on if you want to lose body fat effectively. Here above me, I have an awesome new video aligned for you, so go ahead and check that out. Thank you as always for your support, and I will see you in that next one.